Hello and welcome to the Armchair Analysts podcast. This is episode 18. I'm Johnny, and with me always is
Ace
Ventura. All right, my man, we are finally through. We've seen it. We found the greener pastures. We made it to the end of the tunnel. The lockdown has ended for a lot of us and is going to end later this week for the rest of us. We made it, man. It was a dark time in the world. It was an ugly time, but we made it. We persevered.
I still have a week left, so it still could be some crazy stuff out here in Minnesota. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, and you guys are the malcontents of the group. No, I'm just kidding. Michigan and Chicago are clearly in the lead for being petri dishes of just filth and disgust. But
Dakota, we'll put everybody but us in the Midwest, right?
There it is.
No.
The good news is we are no longer confined to our homes for the most part, that will be ending shortly. And the even better part is now we can kind of look forward to what that means. First of all, my shaggy ass can get a haircut, so that's really important to me. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited. I've been decrepit. It's horrible. I want to grow out my man bun, but it's just not worth it.
Please don't.
But more importantly, I think it's time to start thinking about when sports are going to begin again. So, I had some people poking a little bit of fun. You start a sports podcast right before sports go away forever. It's been pretty crappy, but pretty much every major sport is now kind of finalizing their plans as what they want to do, how they want to approach the season, whether they're resuming it or beginning it, depending on what sport you're following. So we've got a lot of stuff in the air. Nothing confirmed as of yet, as the time of recording, but I mean, it's coming to a head pretty quickly. So the other side of that is not only to get these plans in place, but how they are going to approach the COVID-19 issue going forward, looking towards player and employee safety. We can speculate, we can, browse Twitter for hours, but, the only real thing that matters is what actually ends up happening, because we won't know until that time comes. So, fortunately,
everything's hearsay.
Pretty much, yeah. But unfortunately, Mr. Ace here got a nice special guest interview with Claire S. from the U of M Fairview Medical Center. She works in the Infectious Disease Lab. So you don't just have to hear some random person, reeling off on Facebook about how they feel or listen to us blabber. You actually have someone who's in the realm of expertise that this covers. So, it's nice because now we can get a little bit of insight on the ramifications of COVID and then the lingering effects they'll have on the sports world. So let's take a listen.
Hi there, Claire. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I appreciate you agreeing to doing this. I know I got to help Zach out here sooner or later for this.
Yeah. No problem. Not a problem at all.
So our podcast being more sports related, we do cover somewhat of a segment called COVID updates recently, and it became sort of a bland, like, hey, what are we doing? Both of us individually doing, but I figured I'd have somebody on that's a little bit more involved, so I wanted to get your feedback and just kind of briefly explain what you do and where you work at.
Sure. Yeah. So I work at an infectious disease lab that does COVID testing for the Fairview hospital system, which has a couple hospitals throughout the state. And so, we just test all of the outpatients and inpatients for COVID testing currently. I do also other things like microbiology stuff that has more to do with bacteria, but this is the main part of my job currently.
Wow. Okay. So you have been somewhat involved with some of the strands that you're seeing, or I guess, how does that work out?
Yeah. So currently, when we're testing COVID testing, there's multiple different strains of coronavirus that are going around, like as far as like the current one that's infecting people. But we are specifically looking for two different genes that are common to all of the coronavirus that they're seeing right now. So we're able to detect all the different strains that are happening.
That's incredible. I guess a lot of people are curious in the general public when vaccines potentially could be available, or like just overall immunization in the future. Just best guess, more or less.
Yeah, I am by far no means an expert, but I know that when it comes to even just doing vaccines in general, like they can take years to decades just to develop for, normal diseases on like a normal basis. And as a country, I think we're asking for something sooner than that, because there's so much more involved than just health. There's economics and everything else. And there's not a lot of research coming around if you actually can be immune to the coronavirus, or if like you producing antibodies creates an immune response. So, I mean, my best guess would be a year out at like the earliest, unfortunately. I think that we just don't have enough information to create a good vaccine for us to be 100% sure that we're immune, you know?
Yeah, and I was even reading that if temperatures get to be warmer and it kind of dies off to some degree, it's going to be harder to find out if people have symptoms too. So,
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so many people are affected differently. It's hard to get a good population of people to even test vaccines on, quite honestly. So,
okay.
but yeah, in the summertime, like most viruses, like the flu and all your seasonal viruses, it's going to die off here in the summer. So we'll have to wait till the fall before you'd get another good population of people to test.
Okay. Slight segue, but well, not really slight, but I guess overall, how is Minnesota doing in terms of the rest of the country, and how I don't know how much you're keeping up with sports that are like kind of the rumors going around with sports opening back up, but how does that relate to our state and just overall getting back to some normalcy?
Sure. Yeah. Don't follow a ton of sports. I am mostly a soccer fan, but
Mm-hmm.
I I think the hardest thing, okay, so Minnesota in general is doing pretty good. I mean, we're unfortunately a very populous state, so our numbers are looking higher than surrounding states.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in general, we're on the lower side of infection rates, and I think we're doing a standard job. I don't know if we could do much better with the information we have, so I think we're doing okay. Opening up sports in the state of Minnesota might be a smidge more difficult. I know that
Yeah.
you're gonna have to be able to provide the hospital space if you were to have an unfortunate infection at some sort of sporting event, like because there's thousands of people that goes to these things. So if you were to get someone infected and it would cause thousands of people, we just don't have the space for that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just going to have to be regulations as far as like cleaning and all that stuff in order for the sports to be able to be open again, or even to do like virtual sports where there's no fans but just teams there, because there's still going to have to be some sort of cleaning regulations and distancing or whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think overall there's going to be questions on how they were able to get, because ultimately they're going to have to buy up so many tests, and
Oh,
there's going to
sure.
be
Yeah.
questions on how they got preferential treatment than the general
Ethics of it
public,
all.
and yeah, the people on the front lines actually doing the testing like yourself. So
Yeah.
it's a touchy subject for sure.
Yeah.
Um, would that mean that even if things potentially open up, would people be required to wear masks at either sporting events, concerts? Could you see it just being kind of like a general norm now?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. In our field, we talk a lot about like how's this going to change the way we go around our lives. And I think, um, you know, Asian countries have dealt with more of these serious viruses than we have here in the United States. And, they wear more masks as a general rule in, their society, their culture than we do. And I think that is going to be kind of
Yep.
a new norm for us. The new thing is around flu seasons or in general at high volume events, we're going to be wearing masks, whether it's required or personal preference, but I would guess it might be required at some events.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, that's I think, a good wrap up. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm grateful that she shared her time with us, but the news of possibly no fans this year and no vaccine for a calendar year, it's hard to swallow, don't you think?
Yeah, I thought she did a really good job with expanding on the answers and was pretty clear in how she brought the answers to us or to myself, and so I'm glad to have her on. I know it
Yeah, it's
makes
a good
me sad
perspective.
though. Especially the new norm too, potentially with face masks. I mean, you see it in other countries, but never did we think it would get to this point here to potentially see that moving forward.
I mean, it gives you a lot of perspective, and I think a lot of the department stores and chain stores that already have like the face guards, the shields, at checkout, like Costco, Walmart, that kind of stuff, that's not going away. Like, that's just, I don't know. It kind of makes you think, like, how dirty were we really? Like, when you're just going around just grabbing a cart, and I've always had my mom harping on me. It's like, it's germs, full of germs. She'll get some hand sanitizer out, like a wet one, and wipe it down. But like,
yeah,
that like, it's not too crazy or far fetched to think that that's probably what we should have been doing all along, because most of this stuff is pretty gross. Like, considering how many people are touching it, whether there's a pandemic or not, it's still just safety and conscious things just to remember. But
yeah,
I'm good.
The good old motherly love is teaching us, coming back to just.
Oh, dude! You know what? I got her that portal, and I'm telling you, this is just a big "I told you so" for the last couple months.
Yeah,
you should have been doing this the whole time, you stupid. No, I think it's important, and I think she's 100% right. A lot of this stuff is sticking around, and whether it lasts for a long time, or at least for the next year or so, like it's going to be around for near future. So
yep.
Hope you're okay with masks and gloves and hand sanitizer.
Sad face.
Well, before the interview, I did mention that, we're talking about these startup plans and dates for a lot of the sports, and for the most part, people are kind of getting their stuff together. They got some good ideas, some a little more cavalier than others. No sports pun intended there, but it's not going to be pretty, because no matter what, someone's going to get screwed. No. Some fan base is going to get pissed off. At this point, it's basically we need to agree on a decision, and we need to get the ball going, because it's we're almost into June, folks. It's getting bad. The NBA and NHL, like it's not looking pretty. And while that's going on, while they're trying to resume or just start the playoffs, MLB is still like, we've already missed over a month of action.
Yep.
Going into 2 months, so it's kind of time to put shit or get off the pot, basically. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Who do you think is going to be first to get their stuff together?
Honestly, I think it'll be the NBA. They're the ones that aren't leaking stuff consistently. The NHL, I don't know why they even came out today fine if they say it's going to be abandoned, but then to basically say they're going to have 14 teams but not know how to test them. They're still working out logistics and like where they're actually going to play. So they're nowhere near, whereas rumors really are only coming out about the NBA. Nobody's officially come out. They've kind of kept everything locked up, lock and seal, Adam Silver and his team, as well as the Players Association, as to when they're going to actually start. So I think they're getting gaining the most traction. For sure, and I think it'll probably be, maybe the end of June, middle of June, if I had to guess. But it's going to most likely be in Orlando. I think that's one rumor that seems to be for sure apparent, just because it's Disney's property, and ESPN, ABC, they're all going to be broadcasting those games anyways, which Disney owns. So
not only that, I think that's kind of what every team's thinking of. If we can just get 1 to 2 to 3, however many facilities that we have to manage and go through, all of the COVID precautions, as opposed to doing for outfitting every stadium with these resources, it's obviously going to be a lot easier just to funnel it through a few arenas and stadiums as opposed to all of them, or half of them. So I think everyone's kind of on the same, frame of mind with that, which obviously, like I said, you're going to piss off some fans. You're going to, there's only so much you can do. They're trying to get sports back, but there's just so many different layers to it,
I think both, so the NBA and the NHL are both, if they resume, most likely just going to go straight into the playoffs. And it sounds like the NBA will have 16 teams and the NHL will be 14. Yep. So exactly your point. There's teams that are going to miss out, number one, which doesn't seem fair as it is, because there's games remaining on both their schedules.
Well, and you got to think strength of schedule, too. I mean, because there's a lot of teams that played the easier half of the year, in the beginning. And so they have, people have been throwing that out a lot, especially in the NBA, just because there was so much left to play. After the All-Star break, a lot of teams typically have a nice, 10 to 15 game run where, maybe you have 9 or 10 of those at home against weaker opponents where you could get a nice run going, try to get some traction in the conference.
Yeah.
But without that opportunity, it's just it's kind of just sudden death. Okay, well, if you made it, cool, you're in, let's go. It's just...
And even weirder, the NBA is thinking about, and this is why the NHL, I don't know how this is going to work, but the NBA is thinking of doing two, so a team in Orlando and then a separate division, so Western Conference in Las Vegas, Eastern Conference in Orlando, or however that works out. But there could be teams like Milwaukee that may go to the Western Conference. So I don't know. They're not doing it how they should. It's basically going to be the 16 best teams could be vying for the title. Which is kind of cool.
I guess one thing you can pull away is that after this, it won't just be the Patriots that have asterisks in the record books. Everything's going to be
again.
Why did that happen? What's going on with that? So it's, looking back, this is going to be a cluster. But I do agree with you. I think NBA is going to be the first one to get things going. And like we talked about, a couple episodes ago, UFC already returned. Golf is already well on its way. Obviously, we'll cover the match a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But as this is all going on, there's still a long way to go before I think we see any baseball, before we see a pitch thrown, because there's a lot of other things going on, and one of them apparently is some of the players just not willing to pay for a smaller salary. Yep. Namely, Rays pitcher Blake Snell. I don't know why, but when I saw this, it literally made me shake my head. Just because some of the quotes he had in there, it was just, I don't know. It
kind of
really
came off a little arrogant, I'm guessing.
He's a good player, but dude, come on. He's making it sound like he's on the front lines and needs hazard pay.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give you a quote from the article. Y'all gotta understand, man. For me to take a pay cut is not happening because the risk is through the roof. It's a shorter season, less play. No, I gotta get my money. I'm not paying unless I get mine, okay? And that's just the way it is for me. So I understand what he's saying, but at the same time, why would they pay you the same amount for working less? Think of any other job.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few people that got paid and didn't work during the shutdown. Very, very few people. Or you got furloughed, or you just got straight up fired. It's very selfish. And I'm not that's not even discussing the type of dollars we're talking about for his salary.
No kidding.
And
he's a pitcher. You brought this up before.
And he's a pitcher. Yeah.
So they're already 6 feet away.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It's what, you're not even in the same dugout.
Yeah.
You're not even near the players. that was something else that I kind of chuckled at.
You're not
too.
a catcher with all the equipment on and an umpire right behind you with
a
batter.
The only thing you got is probably your pretty little necklace and maybe some sunflower seeds. Chill out, man. Get over it.
Well, and the only one question, not to segue a little, is what happens if a star player though tests positive? Especially in the other leagues where they're going straight into the playoffs, do the team have to stop playing for 2 weeks? Do the teams in the playoffs have to forfeit their season basically then? How does that
I'm thoroughly hoping that this is part of the preparations and why this is taking so long. Because if you do not have those contingencies in place, then you just wasted, 2 months of planning, 2 months plus of planning. It doesn't,
mm-hmm.
It's great to have all the preventative stuff, but when the prevention still nets a positive test or more, then what does it all matter? Why did we even bother with it? Why did we stop live sports anyway? If you're, I understand that it's going to be difficult and it's going to have more hard decisions to follow, but and it's not unheard of. How many NBA players contracted it within 4 or 5 days?
Yeah.
Oh, it was really
and more
bad.
Even.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, and that's the thing. It's NBA, that's the smallest roster. It's the smallest staff,
mm-hmm.
And with the smallest amount of fans. So, that's, you think to the other sports, it's the roster's a little bit bigger for hockey, much larger for baseball,
mm-hmm.
So it's, it's kind of worrisome, especially, not even talking the games, but just like in the facilities when they're practicing, meetings, that kind of stuff.
And one of the proposals with baseball is to have 5 more roster spots to up to 30. So now you're including more players. Yeah, no fans, but still, that's 5 more players in the locker room than it was before. So it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it's messy, and I am so glad that I do not have to make any sort of decision whatsoever.
Right?
I can just criticize them whether it goes good. I can criticize them if it goes bad, because we are armchair analysts. That is what we do, my friend. I know that you were busting at the seams to talk about the match, so why don't you go over that for a little bit for us?
Oh, yeah, perfect segue. Speaking of armchair analysts. Yeah, Tiger and Eli. Oh, God, not Eli. Peyton Manning.
Other Manning.
Yeah, the other one. Beat Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady on, was it? Oh, God, I can't even. Yeah, yesterday. Jeez. Tiger looked good. He looked good. Manning held his own. Unfortunately, the only one that really didn't was Tommy. Tommy couldn't really hold his own. Phil reached a par 4 in one shot off the drive, just bombed it over the trees off the left. He's still got power, but yeah, Tiger looked the most consistent overall, which is probably going to be scary when golf actually resumes. The PGA resumes in a couple weeks. We'll see. I don't know. It was a charity match, which actually had the most viewership ever in golf history at 5.8 million viewership.
Yeah, they raised a lot of money in a short amount of time.
Yeah, 20 million raised. And I think that's a combination of 10 million that was donated by, I think, all 4 of their charities, and then the other was separate donations.
Yeah, that's damn impressive. And you know what? I will rip on Tom Brady as much as I can and the Patriots, but you got to admit, I think Peyton's got a little bit more time to practice golf these days than Tom does. So
yeah,
we can give him a little pass there. Like,
exactly.
I'm pretty sure Peyton played a ton even while he was still in the NFL. So I mean, there's. I will take every chance I can to take a swing at Brady, but no, man, come on.
Yeah. The shot he actually holed out from about 150 in, but that was on like 10 or 11 or 7th hole. It was like the 7th or 8th hole, 3/4 of the way, or basically almost half the way through. But until then, he was missing left, missing right. It wasn't looking too pretty for him.
Yeah, kind of like some of his errant passes in his last year in New England.
Oh,
well. See, I redeem it. Don't worry. But I would like to see us in a couple years, because I don't know if you know this, but there's a few nice golf courses in Florida, and you can kind of play year round.
Oh,
so
gosh.
I think in a couple years, Tommy's going to want some revenge. So no, it's really cool that they were able to do that, and the viewership was as impressive as it was. And I tell you, like, if you were on social media at all over the weekend, somebody was posting about it. Someone was doing pictures of it and stuff. So it's impressive, and this wasn't even, I don't even think it was marketed that much. It was just kind of word of mouth, and once it was on, people just started catching on, like, oh, let's check it out, So.
Well, and a lot of it was through like Instagram or different social media channels where they all have large followings. So even just like,
oh yeah,
and Phil's a goofball. Phil is pretty funny on some of his social channels. Oh yeah, he's very sarcastic and dry humored. I think you'd like it. So and Peyton Manning, surprisingly, he's an underrated trash talker. So they all were giving it to each other, which was funny.
Oh, he's not underrated. Peyton Manning's been a riot for
you're
years.
Right. Not underrated.
Come on.
I meant he comes at you when you're not expecting it, really. Like, just great jabs, basically.
Yeah, he seems soft-spoken, but yeah, he can definitely turn you around pretty quickly and give you a kick in the butt. So, yeah, I think that's why a lot of people are still clamoring for him to get in the broadcast booth, just because how would it not be entertaining?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that everyone's on this vendetta to get Booger out of the booth, and I'm sort of on that same bandwagon. But your boy, Mr. Tessitore, the other half of the Monday Night Football crew, he's found a new career with the Holy Moly TV show. and covering that. So
You
hopefully
love
he
it.
will stay there. Hopefully he will stay there, and then we'll have 2 open spots on Monday night. No, I can't imagine they would want to go through and get 2 new people, but I don't know. Tessitore has always just annoyed me because he has such a beautiful broadcasting voice, and he just uses it just to spew garbage. I don't know.
Have you watched that? Holy moly!
Yeah, no, God, no.
The putting show? Yeah, I haven't either.
Pass. Hard pass.
It'd be fun to concept, actually, to have a nice little par 3 or a putting course like that, but you got to have some money, too, so you can't just put it on TV right away.
Yeah, well, I know that you would enjoy watching it just because they got Steph Curry on it and Rob Riggle's in it, and he's always an amusing person to watch and listen to. But yeah, Big Joe Tessitore, maybe making a career change. Who knows? But all right. Well, is there anything else you want to touch? Anything we missed?
I mean, we could dive into some Gopher recruiting class football, but I figured we could even wait until more college crap is finalized, because there's some schools that are allowing programs or athletics to resume, but no sign of classrooms beginning. So it's kind of an odd dichotomy.
Yeah, and that's something else too. It's, even if sports are cleared to resume, the schools across the nation have lost so much just in lack of tuition, and having to cut teachers and cut teacher salaries, cutting employee salaries.
Yeah.
Furloughing other employees that are non-teaching. So it's going to be rough. And then I know that the sports are some of the biggest generators of income for some of the universities, so they have no choice but to plow forward. But I feel like it's going to be harder to get players if you can't get them as students first.
Yeah.
Maybe not for all the schools. I'm pretty sure Alabama will still have a full roster in Ohio State, but
well, that's an interesting thought you're bringing up.
Yeah, it all goes hand in hand, man. It's still collegiate athletics at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, they should have a right to refuse to play if they're not able to go to classes and not be condemned for it, which that's the problem. The coaches don't get any flack for that, but if a player wants to skip, he doesn't, for the right reason too, he has no backing.
We will probably have to delve into that issue a little bit more in the coming episodes, but for now, I think I blabbed on enough. I need to get us to the greatest part of our show. It's time for Ace's Quick Six. What do you have this week?
So it's actually NCAA. We're kind of keeping in tune with that, and I thought what better way than to discuss how to manage the monstrosity of having to basically pay athletes, or when it comes time for student athletes to become athletic students, where they're going to get paid for what their performance is on the field, as well as off the field too. And so I have six kind of ideas that they should mull over in terms of how this should all work out for this, basically representation for the students. I think overall that's the main issue at heart of all this. So the first one is make sure that every sport has a say, or more or less a players association group. Each sport has a say in this, and that builds a governing body. So with that governing body, you're discussing everything involved with how the students should profit off of their name, likeness, and what they do on the field as well. Because ultimately, if it's already passed at one, or soon to be passed at one state level in California, and it's getting traction in other states, this is going to become a real thing. So to be able to have those that are actually in the trenches, the athletes, writing up the laws or writing up some of their direction, and then obviously consulting. There's got to be consultants and those third parties that are vetting all this out, but overall making sure that their profit sharing is equal in some ways going to be important. So one of those ways they're going to be profiting is obviously broadcasting games. They need to make sure they get a cut of those broadcasts, like the revenue generated from broadcasting the games, no matter what channel it's on, and especially like with the Big Ten network, the SEC network, all of these divisions now have their own network where the universities and all of them are profiting to build larger, athletic departments or football stadium complexes, what have you, nice workout facilities. So it'd be nice to see the players dip into that. And then as well, number 3, alternate revenue sources. That could be at some point there was NCAA football, so esports, video game. Obviously with other sports, it's not really practical, so you might have to go to closer venues, whether it be sandwich shops, sports drinks. Dealerships apparently love handing out money to athletes.
Illegally and legally.
Yeah. Huh. So just basically, I think there'll be avenues, especially even if you're like a volleyball player or somebody that track and field that may not get as much attention. I think there's stuff locally that could garner traction for you to be able to market yourself. And at the end of the day, I know that not every player is going to be able to take advantage of this, but still, it's
some is better than none because and I'll argue because I remember one of the very first sport video games I ever played was NCAA basketball, and I was really confused how, they didn't have all the naming rights. They did, it was still a fun game, but it was just weird not having the actual players or anything, actually in the game. So
yeah,
I think if they are able to do it, it's going to kind of expand and give people more options. And I think we might have mentioned this a little bit ago, but the NFL exclusive licensing with EA is up for negotiation again. So if, EA and a couple of these publishing companies can maybe relinquish some of the territory here and some of the monopoly in video games, we might be able to see NCAA actually get a couple companies to kind of vie for, making games for them. So
that would be sweet.
I mean, I think it'll open things up. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to see something more of along those lines in the coming years too. It'd be good for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And kind of in a good way to add on to that too, for number 4, it's more just having brand awareness about yourself. And so basically taking advantage of the opportunities that you have on social media, and whether that be, through classroom learnings or even just going to the library and trying to pick up on how to better yourself in that aspect or how to do a better job of branding yourself. I think those are unique ways to get people to not only follow you, but you could make money off follows and all that stuff on social media. So to take advantage of that, especially if you have a good photographer alongside you to make good pictures and even video now, it's worth it to explore those options. The fifth and 5 and 6.
Hold on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
The one person who made a brand for himself and didn't even really think about it at the time, Anthony Davis. With the eyebrow, refusing to shave it, he became an icon. He had his profile picture on numerous things with just the eyebrow.
That's a great point.
He made his own brand without even really trying. That was just him. And whenever you saw or heard of a unibrow, AD immediately came to mind. I don't know why, but that's as soon as you started talking about that, that's the first thing I thought of.
Wow. I know, that was random, but that makes total sense.
For sure. I mean, obviously, he's become, a much, much more complete person and player over the years. But in college, that was his brand. That was him.
Mm-hmm.
You see the uni, AD's coming to swat your shot down.
Oh, they had T-shirts and everything.
Oh, yeah. They had him in the crowd. It was literally just an eyebrow. I remember that. Hell yeah. All right, sorry. I just needed to interject with that.
Yeah. So 5 and 6 are more rules, kind of just to keep things in line, as well as they do now, right? But no. So once a student athlete hires an agent, though, they forfeit their scholarship because in that way, hopefully, the end of the goal is to give it to somebody else. You shouldn't, if you're going to go to that length, you clearly are getting some backing on whether you think you're good enough or think you are good enough to play professionally. So at that point, you forfeit the scholarship. And then number 6 would be, because these universities, now this one could be debatable, but I put no athletic apparel sponsorships while on scholarship, just because each university kind of has their own representation, whether it's, I know people say some of those deals are done illegally too when they're recruiting players, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense then for more players to then try to get onto different sponsor deals and then compete with their own universities. So yeah, that's what I got. That's a lot to digest.
It is, but it brings up a lot of good points, and I guarantee these points will be coming up again in the not so near future. So it's nice just to kind of get them on the plate right now, just so you can kind of pick and poke at them. And a lot of the stuff it's things that we've already kind of mentioned in other facets, but everyone's gonna need to kind of come together just to get it all on the same page and get this deal worked out. So I'm excited. Anything that brings down the NCAA is amazing in my book. So
yes.
Nonprofit. I'll never let that go.
I
will
know.
never let that go. Anyways, that is our show. That is episode 18. We want to thank everybody for listening. If you're not already following us on Twitter, you can track our journey at AA Podcasts. And if you're not already following or subscribed to us, we are on pretty much any platform you could want. Just search Armchair Analysts. Check us out. Give us a follow, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends. Also, we are on YouTube for those of you that prefer that medium. So, as I always say, we don't care how you listen as long as you do. Appreciate you guys. I'm Johnny, that's Ace, and we are out.